Welcome back to Upcycled, Crafted for a Purpose. Today we're going to be talking about going from being homebody to a hug sharer. And this comes from the book Upcycled, Crafted for a Purpose from Bold Vision Books, in which we talk about how God upcycles us in our souls, much like we take broken, unused, throwaway items and upcycle them into purposeful works of art and gifts to share with others. God can take us from being homebodies, isolated people who feel alone and outcast, and create in us an ability to share His love and His grace and His presence with other people who need to know that they are loved as well. So today we're going to do a craft making hugs that you can send to people who need to feel loved, like shut-ins, like people in assisted living facilities, like children in orphanages or in foster care. We can help share hugs that are physical hugs with scriptures and words of inspiration. So let's get started with the materials that you will need for this project. First of all, you're going to need something that will be used as the hands for your hug. Now you can use any kind of gloves, or you can actually trace your hands onto fabric or pieces of cardboard, or you can use some kind of cardstock or construction paper if you're just doing this as a paper craft and sending it somewhat like you would send a card. Now I like to make this as a fabric project because it lasts a little bit longer than a paper project, and the links in the project, the way I'm going to make it today, can be used as bracelets, little individual scriptures that someone can take out of the hug and carry it with them for their day. For those who are grieving, they might just need to focus on one single scripture each day. And that can be for people who are recovering from all kinds of things, including grief, but not limited to grief. It could also be for someone who's overcoming a divorce or an addiction or a disease or some kind of condition that has caused them to feel as though they're isolated. So let's talk about some of the other things that we'll need besides the hands. You will need something to use for the links. Now you can also make this project as a scarf or as a shawl, so you can use larger links, larger squares of fabric. You could use fabric felt and then just sort of put something on top of it that you sew onto the squares of felt and make that into the inspiration that you put on the shawl. You can also use silk scarves and just write on the silk scarves those scriptures. I'm going to use some printable fabric that you can use with an inkjet printer. I found that that would be useful, and so you will want to have ahead of time printed out some scriptures onto that printable fabric so that you can have that ready for when you make your links. And I have a list of grief scriptures available for you. I will list in the notes where you can get those. You also, if you're using some kind of fabric like this printable fabric, or if you're using ribbon for your links, you're going to want to have some fray block so that it doesn't fray along the edges of the ribbon links or on the edges of the printable fabric. You will, if you're doing it the way I'm doing it today, you may want to get some ribbon as your links to put behind those printed fabric scriptures. You'll need something to cut out your fabric scripture printed fabric, and you'll need something to cut your links with. You'll need something to attach the links together. I chose these Velcro dots. You can get those pretty much anywhere that you buy things that you make crafts or fabric projects with. If you want to make sure that when you cut out your fabric with the scriptures printed on it, if you want to make sure it's the right width and the right length, you can use a ruler for that. You'll need something to glue the scriptures onto those ribbon links with. Okay, so those are the items that we're going to need. Let's go ahead and get started. So I went ahead and took my scriptures and I have them printed out, and I measured out how long I want my ribbon to be, and I cut that into about a 4-foot length or so, because that's about an arm's width, kind of like a hug. And so I'm going to divide this arm's width into equal lengths. And they don't need to be exact, but it's preferable if these lengths are about the same length that you would be able to use to wrap around a wrist for a bracelet. And consider the fact that your wrist, like mine is particularly small, may not be the same size as the person receiving this. So think about how large their wrist may be. So give yourself just a little bit of ample room. So these are the lengths that I'm going to want. And again, they don't need to be exactly the same length, but I'm going to go ahead and cut my ribbon so that it'll be equal lengths. See how easy that is? Alright, so I have sort of equal length ribbons. And then the next thing I'm going to do is determine which side of that ribbon I want to be up and how I'm going to center the scripture onto the ribbon. Now for these scriptures, I kind of want them to be in the center of this middle part of the ribbon. I thought that was very pretty that it had it that way. So I'm going to cut them so that I don't have any more of this than I need. And these came printed onto a piece of paper. So I'm going to take the piece of paper off and glue it onto each one of these. So this is a pretty simple part of the project. You just snip, and then I'm going to take tacky glue and glue each one of these on with tacky glue. Or you could use another kind of glue if you prefer. Just use whatever works for you. Make sure you go all the way to the edges of the square of the printed fabric so it sticks and doesn't come off. So on the edges of this kind of ribbon, if you think it looks like it's fraying, see like that right there looks like it might fray, you'll want to make sure that the ribbon's cut straight. And take your fray block and apply the fray block. Now with the fray block, you will want to have something underneath the ribbon when you apply the fray block. It is very messy. So go ahead and apply that right along the edge. I'm using a paper towel. So each time you put one on, before it has a chance to fray, go ahead and catch it. Alright, I'm going to give you just a second while I finish this part, and then I'll be right back. And we're back. The next step in this project is to make sure that your fray knot has dried, and to get out your fastener dots and fasten them onto the gloves and each end of each link. So with the fastener dots, there is a fuzzy side and a prickly attaching grabby side, and that's my technical terms for it. And you will want to make sure that you start with your gloves, because if you're using this for your gloves instead of mitten clips, that's another option you can do. But you'll want to make sure that the fuzzy side is on the inside of the glove, otherwise you won't want to wear a glove that has the scratchy side against your wrist. So start there, and then you will take your fastener dot and alternate. One end of each link is going to have a scratchy side, and the other end of each length will have a fuzzy side, so that each one will wrap around your wrist and attach together. So with this one, I will want to have this be able to be attached to the top of one of the scripture sides. The other end we'll want to wrap around, so it'll be on the bottom side. So instead of attaching it to the top, I'll attach it to the bottom, like so. So you'll want to go down the line and attach a scratchy side to the top of each one. And a fuzzy side to the bottom of each one. And that way it'll wrap around the wrist like so later on, and be like a little scripture that you can carry around. And they will also attach to each other all the way across and create a link for each one. And at the end, you're going to want to have something on the bottom of this one that will attach. Now what you could do if you don't want the scratchy side against your skin and it ends up that the scratchy side is going to be on the last mitten, then you can put it on the outside of the mitten so it's not scratching against your wrist. Okay, and now to share the final assembly of the Homebody to Hug Sharer craft. What we end up with is we have the two hands, and it's best if you have them outward because that's how you share a hug. So you'll want to have them stretching out, and then each of those links will connect together to give just a big hug of inspirational verses or scriptures or quotes or whatever you want to share as your hug for that person that needs to hear your love. And by sharing this project with any of the suggested missions or charitable places that are in the chapter Homebody to Hug Sharer in Upcycled, Crafted for a Purpose, you can help feel blessed by sharing this blessing with others. It's a way for you to reach out from wherever you are and share love with people who need it most. And in doing so, if you were lonely to begin with, you won't feel alone anymore. I hope that you enjoyed this craft and that this will be a blessing to you and those with whom you share it. And I hope that you'll join us again in Upcycled, Crafted for a Purpose. Check out this and more wonderful content on tinayeager.com.